Hi, this is Jordan.
And I'm Bryan, and you're listening to The Quality Varies.
Hello, good sir.
Howdy. How are you?
I am fantastic. I am excited for what we got going on today. It's going to be another thick one. A thick episode.
A big boy, huh?
Yeah, it's a big one today.
Yeah. I'm going to have to ask you to forgive me. I am just coming over a cold right now, so that's why I sound maybe a little more velvety or raspy.
A little gravelly.
Yeah, I don't know how I sound, actually. I don't actually listen to the sound of my voice.
Well, I admit I have more questions than answers from that as the person editing the show, but I'll take that for what it is.
All right, cool.
We are talking about resistance today. We're going to dive into that topic and kind of our experiences with it.
What is resistance?
Well, I'll have you know, I have the definition pulled up.
Wow, look at you all prepared.
Yes, since you asked me, I will not put you on the spot like I have in previous episodes when we've been going over topics like this.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to run through all of them. So, an act of or instance of resisting, super helpful.
Wow. Thanks, Miriam.
A means of resisting. Need I say more?
Please do.
All right, let's try this again. The inherent ability of an organism to resist... Oh, okay, well, these guys really got to use different words. Harmful influences such as disease, toxic agents, or infection. The capacity of a species or strain of microorganism to survive exposure to a toxic agent. All right, 3. I think 3 is the best. 3 is an opposing or retarding force, the opposition offered by a body or substance to the passage through a steady electric current. And then a psychological defense mechanism wherein a patient rejects, denies, or otherwise opposes the therapeutic efforts of a psychotherapist. Or, and this could lead us down a whole other road, an underground organization of a conquered or nearly conquered country.
Yeah, that one. We're talking about that one.
Yeah, we are. You thought we were done talking about D&D. The psychological one, more similar, but it's an abstract word in the way that we're using it today. A couple examples for me, just to kind of throw everything on the plate and make sure the audience is with us. In school, something that I very much despise. Always a thing of like procrastinating, like I will do that paper later, I will study for that test. Or in my case, you can take it to another extreme and like maybe I'll drop this class instead of doing this assignment, or something like that.
Wow, that's healthy.
Yeah, staying in bed in the morning, avoiding what the day has in front of me. Anything come up for you?
Yeah, getting out of bed. Yeah, definitely opposed to that most mornings. Mm-hmm. I'm opposed to tantrums that my kids throw. I think I probably resist those.
When does your day start, by the way, these days?
It depends. One time this week, my day started at about 5:45.
Mm-hmm. Nice, good.
Yeah. My 5-year-old, Griffin, can now get my 1-year-old, Grayson, out of his crib. So that's very fun. Now the 1-year-old just has free reign in the mornings. It's just terrifying. Yeah, I resist that. I'm opposed to that, I would say. Making lunch, for some reason, is a big one for me. I never want to make lunch, but then I get mad that I'm hungry.
Oh.
Can you relate at all?
Interesting. I have never... The thought of making a lunch to, like, bring with me to work or bring with me somewhere has never really has never fit into my life. I think about that sometimes. My roommates, they both just go to work. They work 9 to 5 and they bring a lunch with them when they go there most of the time. Mm-hmm. I can't fathom that. That seems crazy. That seems crazy to me. Yeah. So no, but I also don't have the consequences of that because I don't have that issue. So
right.
I wouldn't expect you to make yourself suspicious, admit anything, but Have you ever seen any other like motorcyclists running away from police officers?
Just videos on the internet.
Of course.
I've had a thought. I've only really been pulled over twice on a motorcycle. The first time I was in the middle of town. There was tons of traffic everywhere, so there was just no chance of me getting away.
Mm-hmm.
And the second time, I had the thought, I even had the urge in my wrist to just like flick the throttle all the way down. Because I was on like a deserted road. I had the jump on the police officer, so I was already going much faster than he was. And I still to this day question if I could have gotten away. But it was like 2 days before Christmas, and I just thought, nope, I'm going to pull over. I'm doing something wrong. I should pull over. But he let me go.
What a nice guy.
Yeah, it was great. I think I even said, God bless you. I never say that.
I've heard a lot of experiences where just the motorcyclist pulling over instead of trying to get away does earn a lot of respect from the police officer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
it works for me. He even brought that up. Like, man, thanks for pulling over. You were going pretty fast.
well, those that do run away, I would definitely use that as an example of resisting
Yeah.
any kind of consequences. Sometimes people do it for totally different reasons. I can't relate because, like we've already talked about, apparently I don't get any kind of emotional kick off of going fast.
Yeah, oh man, that still just creeps me out that you don't feel anything.
Ooh, on that, we're not going to talk about bikes today, but the week and a half, 2 weeks of 118 degree weather here in the Northwest, and I didn't turn my bike on at all. It just sat out on the street.
Mm-hmm.
The sound of that didn't sound fun to me.
No.
I would have to go fast in that case because I would have to be going like at least 60 miles an hour not to feel hot.
Nope, I can tell you from experience, because we had pretty much the same weather in St. George. Even going that fast, the heat just hurts your skin. Like, it's just so hot that your skin just hurts.
Ew.
Yeah.
I went and there was somebody passed another person a note, their neighbor, that these kids were going to have a lemonade stand. And so a lot of these bikers were just going to go do a run out and go support these kids' lemonade stand.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that is amazing.
That's
of
so
course
cool.
I will do that. I knew that my battery was dead because I accidentally left the key in 2 weeks ago. And I went out there an hour later and I realized and took the key out, but I knew it was dead. So I pushed it out into the garage, plugged it in, and set it to charge. Went out an hour later and it hadn't charged at all. And I was like, what have I done? And so I go out like 6 hours later, it still hasn't charged at all. And so I mess with it a little bit. I'm dinking around. I don't know anything about motorcycles, so everything I'm doing is pointless. I come back out today. The battery thing is at full. It says the bike's at full charge. I'm like, oh, beautiful. And then I hear this sputtering sound, like when the lid of a water bottle is just like not quite all the way sealed.
Mm-hmm.
A pressurized leak. And I'm looking around and I like lean down to the bike and it was the battery. And I was like, that doesn't sound the best. Let me just try to turn it on.
Oh, man.
Didn't do anything. So that act was also me resisting. And there's a part of me that just wants to sell the bike off again now. And just be rid of it. I put a couple down to get a couple more surface level ones. I watch YouTube videos instead of editing. I put that down at no particular time in the last month. Adding to the show notes for future show ideas instead of editing. I wrote that down also at no particular time.
Right.
There are a couple different ways to take resistance. There's a couple things that we want to talk about today, but those are the things that we see in everyday life. There are certain things that I know. I look at my desk and there are certainly things I have avoided on a regular basis. I have a to-do list on my phone. There are things that, I'll look at my phone and for the fourth time, I'll reschedule something to next week. All signs of different levels or different angles of resistance. We're going to discuss some of the harm with resistance, but it's not all bad. some of the harm with resistance, but it's not all bad. With strength training at the gym, resistance is kind of a core part of that. Would you agree, Bryan?
Yeah, absolutely.
What purpose does resistance serve for somebody that can probably explain what goes on in the body better than I?
I'm sure it'll come up sometime in the episode, but there's an old saying that I know you know, and it goes, "What you resist persists." And I'm sure we'll talk about that philosophically in a minute, but physiologically, you're moving these weights around, your body is pushing against this resistance. And so one of two things can happen. You can drop the weights and potentially hurt yourself, or you can move through the resistance and become stronger. And the goal of exercising, any kind of exercise, especially weightlifting, is to move through the resistance and to get stronger.
And I'm sure it's a commonly known thing, but the muscles they are physically being torn up.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yeah. The actual strands of the fibers of the muscle are actually breaking. They are breaking apart, snapping, ripping apart from each other. And the recovery process is actually where you get stronger. It's not all the weights that you lift at the gym that make you strong. It's sleeping after you work out that makes you strong. That's like a huge tenet of any kind of weightlifting, whether you're in bodybuilding or powerlifting or strength training. The workout itself has a lot less to do with your training than you think. It's all about sleeping. The best weightlifters and bodybuilders in the world, they all swear up and down that if you're not sleeping for, between 9 and 11 hours a day, you're just not going to be competitive at weightlifting, because that's where the change happens.
Interesting. I knew a portion of that, obviously, but I wasn't aware of the stress that they put on it. Also, 9 to 11 hours.
It's a long time, man.
A long time.
Except Arnold. Arnold says about sleeping,
did he
right?
do something? What did he say about it? Was it different?
Oh, yeah. So he was asked, these guys are sleeping for so long. What do you say to them? And he was like, well, my friends, sleep faster.
Oh, yes. That's amazing.
Yeah.
How long did he sleep for?
I don't know.
It says maybe more just in the average range.
Yeah. I want to say it was between 6 and 8 hours, but I don't know that for sure. I do know that he said his advice for people who want to get more done in a day is to sleep faster.
I like that. I don't know if that has an interesting take on the conversation between acceptance and resistance, but maybe we'll get back on that later.
We can tie it back in.
Yeah. So that's a major part of weightlifting in a good way. Resistance in some of those other surface areas have various impacts on our life. Resisting in a more, for me, kind of a deeper example, I know I can go straight to like illness, ignoring, saying like, oh, I'm not sick. That sometimes works, but I don't know if I would attribute it to the resisting part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I would say all the other things I'm doing during the day are probably healthy and I just bounce back. But the other times, if it is a more serious illness, saying that I don't have it and continuing to go throughout my day, or like when I was not feeling too well, and I was 24 hours into my second shot of my vaccination,
mm-hmm.
and I said to myself, I do not feel bad, I feel fine, and I'm going to go push start this motorcycle, or try to, for 20 minutes. Resisting in that situation only led to my downfall for the next 30 hours.
Right.
I was just out for the count.
Yeah, and we were just talking about the gym. My senior year of high school, that's when this was, I was power cleaning, and I was kind of competing for the record with one of my very best friends from high school. I was thinking, yeah, I've got this. I've got another set. And I'd already done kind of the prescribed number of sets, but I had my heart set on this record, this weightlifting record. So I kept going, and I didn't have it. I ended up tearing 2 different discs in my spine. I took the rest of the week off practice. Years later, that still has negative consequences in my life. There are mornings when I wake up and I just have shooting pain down my leg. I can't bend over to tie my own shoe, or it's been so bad some days where I can't turn my upper body a certain way to look or reach for something. It just sends excruciating pain to my lower back.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's been quite a battle at points, and I don't know where you were planning to go with this conversation, but I can tell you in that instance with my back injury, the days when I wake up and hurt and think, I wish I didn't hurt, or I wish I wouldn't ever have tried that last power clean. Those days hurt worse physically than the days that I wake up and just say, okay, I'm hurt today,
Yeah, I can relate to that. Both you and I have had the experience with an employer of yours, and a guy who taught me a very important lesson, but we had a friend that, I call it the highlighter challenge. He just held 2 highlighters up, and it was kind of 2 lessons in one for me. It was just 2 highlighters, and one was vanilla ice cream and the other was chocolate ice cream, and he just tells you to choose. So you choose, and you go through a couple other things, and then the topics start to change, and they become a little bit less something to look forward to as far as illness, tragic events, or something like that. And then he takes one of the highlighters away, and there's only one highlighter, and he challenges you. One of the examples is just to pick one out of the ether is cancer. Mm-hmm. So you just hold up the highlighter to you, and he says, cancer, choose.
Right.
And I have never, ever seen that be done or done it to others, because it's actually a pretty regular part of my teaching whenever I teach lessons in church.
Mm-hmm.
I've probably experienced it or done it 24 times. Mm-hmm. Never had somebody just first try choose into it. They're always no, I want to do something different, or I want something different. Mm-hmm. And the problem with that is in this scenario, there is nothing different. You have cancer.
Right.
You're choosing into the experience. And I had a family member that did that, was asked that question, and they got very emotional or very agitated, and they didn't want to choose that. And the concept behind that is you have, in this situation, you have cancer whether you choose into it or not. Mm-hmm. And the science that goes behind the kind of the basis of that lesson is there is science behind folks that have chosen into and have embraced the reality of their illness, in this case cancer, reported less pain and also higher recovery rates,
right,
than the people that resisted and just fought it the entire way. And the word fight, that can mean different things. Mm-hmm. That was fascinating to me.
Yeah, you're talking about what you fight, you only make stronger, right?
Yeah.
So in this scenario, fighting the reality of having cancer makes cancer stronger.
Yes.
Not that, not that giving up if you have cancer is going to cure you of cancer.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
You still fight the illness, but you don't fight against having the illness.
Yeah. This gets into, we're gonna start jumping around here, but the word fight in that situation is the people that have embraced it. They're not necessarily fighting cancer. Disclaimer: I've never gone through this experience, but in some senses they are just choosing into life instead of focusing on the disease. Mm-hmm. And that gets into kind of the alternative of resisting something. I want to quickly, I have my own example that I can really more speak from experience from, and not make assumptions for other people. In mine, Cancer is not the one that I have. I have a chronic illness though. I'll have to edit in. I never remember the name of my own illness
Oh no.
because it's so long.
Uh-huh.
Epidermolysis. Okay, so it's epidermolysis bullosa simplex.
Wow, that is a lot.
Yeah.
That's a mouthful, man.
Yeah, long names, lots of syllables, but that's what I have. My understanding of it, the body does not have and also rejects collagen, which is liquid in between the layers of skin.
Mm-hmm.
Folks that have any knowledge in this probably can tell me I'm wrong. What that translates into is friction or any kind of tensity on the skin just makes blisters, and that's the extent of it.
Mm-hmm.
That was very invasive as a child to the point where I couldn't wear street shoes to school. I had to wear slippers. Doing anything really hasn't changed, but doing anything past my boundaries, the boundaries have changed. But causes probably three days to like a week of kind of being out for the count. Of being able to walk, or if I had used my hands, being able to kind of effectively use my hands. That was something that I resisted for a long time. Just instead of choosing into things that worked for me, I just sat in that resentment and those thoughts that you were talking about as far as, I wish that I hadn't ever done that last set.
Mm-hmm.
I was just sitting in that, like, I wish that I could do these things that I couldn't. Instead of thinking of things that I could do, I was just focused on the things that I knew that I couldn't do.
Right.
The logical things that were outside of my reach, and just being resentful of those things. I have found that as I've gotten older, my emotional state does affect how bad or how good, like how quickly I can recover from it. And my mental, like and my mental state too.
Yeah.
Those have had tangible effects.
Right. One thing people don't know about emotions is that emotions are experienced physiologically.
Yeah.
There was a unit of a class I took in college where we studied the physiology of emotion, and it was, at the time, it was fascinating. But learning from the therapists at Desert Solace and how everything is energy essentially, and emotions are energy, and they exist within our bodies. This energy exists within our bodies. It makes a lot more sense to me now. But there are empirical studies, like scientific observations on how emotions physically affect you. Emotions like anger and fear can have like long-term deleterious effects on your body and organs, especially your joints. I think
Absolutely.
I think fear, like, it really hurts your joints for some reason. And so people with like clinical depression or like a clinical anxiety disorder, they will have like physical symptoms of like arthritis or something, if it goes untreated for so long,
And there's the obvious one of like, depending on your emotions, if those translate into being physically tense, then that's going to have a very obvious and pretty immediate effect on the body.
Yeah,
exactly. People experience headaches or whatever.
Oh yeah, muscle tension for sure.
Yeah.
And the more tense your muscles are for longer periods of time, lactic acid starts to build up in your muscles, and that's a very real source of pain as well. And there's even studies that work in the opposite direction. Dr. Ekman did a series of studies all over the world where he demonstrated that holding your body and your face in certain positions can evoke certain emotions. And he actually mapped out. Have you heard about this? Have I told you about this?
Either if he was the first one, his work is a very popular, like as far as the facial expressions can do, turn into emotions.
Right.
Very popular part of the field.
Yeah. Ekman pioneered that research, and he did it. He showed that it was culturally universal. At least the 5 main emotions, happiness, sadness, anger, fear, and disgust, those are universal across all cultures. And he mapped out on the face what muscles to pull and where to put your eyebrows, your upper cheeks, your lower cheeks, and your mouth and your nose, like the bridge of your nose. We did a little activity in one of my psychology classes where we watched a video, and the researcher, I think it was Ekman, he told you what to do with your face step by step, and then he had you close your eyes and hold that facial expression for like 20 seconds and to notice your heart rate and the temperature in your face. And he had us make a scared face, and I could feel, like when we closed our eyes and just noticed what was going on, I could feel my heart beat faster and my hearing got better because my body was like searching for threats.
Yeah. And I've experienced that through my whole life with this condition. I want to put two of my current, like the two of the things that I deal with in front, and you can kind of tell me like what's going on. So we have the physical skin condition, and my childhood was full of like every day, all day, like the things that I was saying to myself in my head is like, I don't want to be bedridden. I hate having these restrictions. I don't want to have these restrictions. I want to do these things that I'm being restricted from doing. And then the other thing in my life is the addiction and the addiction recovery that I've gone through. And all the sayings there was don't act out, don't do this, don't do that. And you've said the saying already, but what's going on there?
You're resisting something, and so so whatever you're resisting is persisting in your perception. In addiction, you fight the urge to act out, and it just gets stronger. It doesn't go away. I mean, both of us can attest to that. It doesn't go away because you don't want it. There comes a point where you have to just accept the negative feelings that you're feeling and just be willing to feel them. The
example that I love to give to folks is I feel it gives a really clear picture on what's going on. It's the stereotypical don't think about the pink elephant.
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah. It's so simple. And it's a pretty commonly used thing, but that is exactly what's going on.
Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But the deeper part of that, and I think you've talked about it before on the show, is when I say don't think about the pink elephant, the mind doesn't recognize the word don't. Mm-hmm. And that can be said, that's a jokey thing to say sometimes, but that is really what's going on. The mind does not recognize the word not, don't, or no in anything that somebody says to you or that you say to yourself.
Right.
That I say to myself. And so what is happening in my brain is I'm just telling myself to think about the pink elephant. And what is happening in my addiction, I would go through in previous forms of recovery attempts, is 90 times a day I'm telling myself to think about acting out.
Right.
I'm not going to make it through that day.
Yeah, could you imagine if you were actually telling yourself to go act out 90 times a day. Imagine hearing from somebody else to make your bed when you got home 90 times that day. Are you going to forget about making your bed that day?
Like, it gives me such clarity as far as the struggle that I would have first mentally and then emotionally and then physically, because they all lead into each other. Mm-hmm. I was reminded, this is a talk for a completely different day, but I do, on a rare basis, I do experience anxiety attacks.
Yeah.
And that is a prime example of something like mental to emotional to physical that is felt across the board by the end of it.
Oh yeah.
In times that I have been like at the apex of trying to like resist to really throw out some of the darker events, but like sitting in the car just like sweating in the middle of the night, just like trying not to do anything because I don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. And I could be in that car for hours. And hearing it said that way, where I'm just telling myself in that moment 1,000 times a second to act out, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So that's enough with the negative stuff. And you talked about your stuff as far as your days when you resist, and the days when you aren't, as far as your physical pain from a past experience. Mm-hmm. So we've talked about acceptance a little bit. So what's the alternative? In these past episodes, we've gone over these negative effects, and turning the corner. I mean, what other options are out there instead of resisting something?
Well, accepting it, right? You said it. Choosing in. I can think of a really good example of this having almost but not quite immediate effect in my life. In Little League football, we're talking 6th grade, I think. This was my first experience with tackle football, with all the pads and, full contact and everything. And I loved it. It was such a great outlet.
Many young children would, as soon as they discover a full contact sport.
Yes. Yeah, especially for me personally, because well, I'm not gonna justify this. I loved being violent, and this was a great outlet for me to be violent and be as absolutely violent as I could right after. Just look at the person I was just fighting and just be completely fine with him and be completely friendly to them again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love football. It's great. It's great. So anyway, my first year of Little League tackle football. I'm loving it, but I'm not very good at it. And, I obviously I started out not very good. But then about halfway through the season, I was starting to gain confidence. And I told my coach, hey, coach, I think I can start. I think I can be a starting lineman for you.
Oof, I like it.
And
coming off the bench.
Yeah. So I thought, he was look. Yeah, he was like, look, you're not there yet. And
okay.
I was like, what? And I went straight into resistance. And so there was a week of practice or a couple days of practice where I was just in my head about oh, maybe I'm not actually that good, or maybe I'm disconnected from reality. Because I was definitely using verbiage like that in 6th grade. I wasn't. But then, I got over it eventually. And I told myself, fine, I know I can do this. I think I can do this. I know I can do this. And all I have to do is to do what my coach wants me to do to show him that I can do this. And then, at that point, let go of being the starter. I accepted my position as a 2nd string lineman. I just put my head down and went to work as a 2nd string lineman. I think it was maybe 2 weeks. I can't remember exactly, but it was by the end of the season, I was the starter because I let go of resisting being on the bench or being the 2nd string.
And you let go of the need
right.
to have it.
And to have it immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just accepting reality. This is where I am. I know where I want to be. I think I can get there. And so I'm just going to show everybody that I can. That's been a huge inspiration for me, Self 5, where I can look back at that and think, in my adult life, I just got rejected for a bunch of grad school programs, a bunch of PhD grad school programs.
Right,
and,
right.
Still today, I think, no, I can get there. I know I can do this. So now I just get to do what they want me to do to show them that I can do it.
Yeah, man, you bring up so many good points when you were talking about that. Receiving feedback is a huge area where I, on a daily basis, I can totally find myself in resistance and defensive.
Oh yeah, and it's so hard. It's so hard for me. I have just a massive ego. It's very hard sometimes to hear feedback. But I think one of the most important things in moving from resistance to acceptance for me.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the main things for myself. I know I was on the other side of it just the other day in our work. Everybody, I kind of serve as the assistant to a lot of these folks for their clients when they need help. And every once in a while, because I'm just I'm talking to their clients, they're not mine. Every once in a while, I'll just hear something that gives the indication that maybe they're not happy with their main agent who I'm helping.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're not getting calls back, or they don't feel the communication isn't enough, or on my end, it's easier on my end. It's still not the easiest. it doesn't really matter what is actually going on and if the client is wrong, because that's not what is going to affect them staying or not.
Mm-hmm.
The fact is that the client feels this way, no matter what the reality is.
Right.
And so even if the communication is good, if the client thinks the communication is not, the client will leave.
Right.
So
Right.
even if it's good, it is still my job to relay that feedback to the agent, basically saying, hey, the client has responded to me saying, in this example again, the communication is not great. And that is hard. That's hard feedback to get.
Mm-hmm.
That you're being told by somebody else that something's going on less than perfect.
Right.
And a lot of times, maybe it is a miscommunication. I'm being vague for a reason, but there's a whole spectrum of people in the real estate market. It could very often be that the agent has done everything that they could, but it's still important for them to know that the client doesn't feel that way. The feedback is still there, and it's hard to receive, and I don't like receiving it on my end. And then the other thing is almost the first foundational step is accepting the emotion that's there.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I would say, I would argue that the very, very first step is to notice what's there.
The awareness.
Right, to realize that I'm not okay, and that's okay to not be okay. You know,
something isn't working for you.
Right. It's okay to admit that you're not okay. I mean, at least to yourself. That is, I mean, as far as like being vulnerable, people get so weird about being vulnerable, right? And a lot of people think, myself included, that being vulnerable is a sign of weakness, and it's not.
Yeah.
And so, at least to yourself, if you're not ready or willing to admit that you're not okay to somebody else, at least admit to yourself, I'm not okay. And that's okay to not be okay. And just start there. Then you can move into, feeling what you're feeling and accepting the emotion there. I think that's what you were getting into.
Yeah, and that's a huge part of it and that's something that I when I came into rehab, there was a lot of things that I logically thought I knew, and there was still, there was a lot of things that I just wasn't actually doing. I just had an awareness of. People can be very smart on the subject of addiction recovery and still be deep in addiction. Me as a prime example. The one thing that I couldn't even take credit for having a knowledge of was the importance of feeling the negative emotions and processing through them. And like one of the big examples is like grief, or if there's been like a loss in the family.
Yeah. Or
in addiction, the addiction and those habits and the emotions that I got out of those stop. There is a loss there, and ignoring that is resistance. I'm lying to myself about the reality,
right?
And so the importance of sitting in and accepting and just letting myself feel the loss, the loneliness, the sadness, whatever was coming up. Because of this change in my life was important. There didn't need to be shame that I was feeling these things about addiction. It was a loss like any other loss, and the body doesn't care what type of loss it is. It's going to have that reaction. And if I don't have it, then I've skipped a step, and that's not really a thing.
Right. You can't skip steps.
Yeah. And that was huge. That was huge for me. After feeling the emotions, we get to do the thing that's really visibly different than resisting, which isn't, we have a choice now.
Right.
When you wake up having that pain for the day, I mean, what's the other thing that you can do?
I mean, the other thing besides hurting?
Well, that's present. That day, that's a reality.
Right.
So instead of resisting, in this case, you have accepted the reality. You have accepted the physical pain. And what happens now that works for you more than what you had done in the past?
Yeah, I just look forward to hurting all day.
Okay, well.
No, serious. I look forward to it, and I kind of, as I'm getting ready for the day and waking up and doing my morning routine, I just look at the things that I was planning on doing, going over my daily schedule, whatever. And I remind myself, okay, that is gonna hurt more. So I mean, I'm not joking about looking forward to hurting. I do that, and I count on it and I plan on it, and you know, that does a lot for me as far as, you know, taking the resistance out for one, but taking the unknown of what the day's going to be like. I just know that this is going to hurt. I'm going to hurt more today. And there's things I do to manage the pain. Yoga is a big thing, and obviously resting.
Right. Yeah.
And, you know, knowing my limitations and my boundaries, like you mentioned. Yeah, I plan on it. I count on it. I look forward to it, and I'm just open to it. And then if the pain goes away, which sometimes, not all the time, sometimes the pain does go away throughout the day, as I loosen up, and as that area of my back gets loosened up and I get moving, the pain does sometimes just go away on its own. And then the rest of the day is that much better because I was already planning on hurting. You know, that went away. So that's a bonus.
Yeah. When we're talking about acceptance versus resistance, there are things that we can and can't control. Mm-hmm. And some of these things I get into trouble if I get those mixed up. And the days, like for your back, stepping into it is not like accepting it with the intention of like the pain going away.
Right.
That's not necessarily a full acceptance. And when I'll use like a recent example because I did go over my limit last week or 2 weeks ago, but I was running. I've been running every day, and we can actually get into that on how that's different than it used to be in the past. Mm-hmm. But running every day, and I could feel it. It being a lifelong condition, I can feel my boundaries and when they're starting to be hit. And mm-hmm. if I stop like right when I'm there, then I can get away without any kind of blister or any kind of effect to my skin at all. And mm-hmm. then the next morning I can wake up just like fully reset and just good to go.
Right.
But if I push those boundaries, then it's kind of like a multiplicative, like, okay, I ran for another mile, 10 minutes, maybe. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, assuredly 10 or more minutes. Let's not get ahead of myself on my times on a mile. I ran an additional mile, and because of that, I now can't physically run for probably 5 or 6 days. When I do that, and I wake up the next morning and I step into acceptance and I process my emotions and I go through everything that I get to do, I'm not accepting and then shirking it off. I'm accepting the reality, and I'm accepting what's going to be different, and I'm also accepting the pain. I laughed about it, but I can actually relate to it a lot. That okay, my day looks a little bit different, or it doesn't, and my experience of it is going to be a little bit different, and I accept that new experience. And kind of going back to that shift on when I started to accept the condition in general was I was still avoiding just in different ways. There was a lot of resentment of I had family members that they were very into sports, like mm-hmm. football and basketball, getting scholarships, having people having like scouts look at them.
Wow. The
condition was albeit worse when I was young, but doing sports was not a physical option mm-hmm. For me when I was that young, and I spent time focusing on what I couldn't do, and then eventually around the time that I started working, I really started to step into things that I could do, and my work and my fun all started to turn to things that were very possible for me in my position. And so I attribute that to a lot to, first of all, I find football and like baseball and basketball just horribly boring to watch.
Oh, gosh dang it, Jordan.
I was always into video games. I started doing a lot of my jobs I worked at a gym, but my jobs were all customer service based. I really started to get into that section of it and enjoying that type of job and becoming good at that, becoming good at talking because I could talk for as long as I needed to. That didn't have anything to do with my condition, mm-hmm. but there was still a form of resistance there. I wasn't accepting that. I was avoiding it. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't something I realized until I went to rehab and I met Bryan.
Hooray.
And this guy is like, hey, I understand you can talk, but I need you to scale down this cliff.
Yeah.
I didn't like that.
An actual cliff, too.
Yeah. And I didn't want to do that. That's not where my strengths were. I had built a life around not needing to touch this. Not needing to be physically fit. And I didn't like that. It was hard in all aspects. Emotionally, mentally, physically, mm-hmm. spiritually. Some choice prayers were said. but there were false beliefs there
Yeah.
that I had put on myself. Some things happened because of my condition, and because of that, I put a blanket restriction on all things physical. Put it away for 10 years, and then I come back to this place where it's 103 degrees at 3 p.m., and we're going hiking twice a week.
Yeah.
And I'm telling myself that, like, we can't do this. Like, we have to fill out medical documents. Like, we're going to have to change the schedule for the whole group. The staff there is looking at me like, oh, he's going to be one of those guys. And I came in with a box of wraps and gauze just to, like, get ready for this experience.
Mm-hmm.
I know there was a day, and I came in with, what was it, like 100 ounces of Epsom salt? That, for people that don't know what that is, it just means that you haven't needed it before. There just came a day, there were some light switched, and I had stepped into it already, if only for the fact that I knew that nothing was going to change. And I physically and emotionally started to step into it as well. And I know it happened the exact day that my mother had just sent me just 2 boxes of gauze wrap, 50 plus rolls of gauze.
Wow.
That shows you how much I was going through gauze previously.
Yeah.
I was going through an entire roll every day that I was at that center, because I had to wrap my hands and I had to wrap my feet every day. And she sends me two of these boxes, and I'd never had to use a single piece of gauze from either of those boxes.
Wow.
This false belief that, like, this isn't something I can do at all. Like, I would physically stop functioning if I had to do this, turned into, I'm doing this, and not even that, like, I'm keeping up with this, albeit still jerk of a employee.
Yeah, I accept that. I don't resist that. I accept that.
But I'm keeping up with him, and I can still walk the next day. By the time we were going out, like, I was going on, what was it, a month of having done this, and my body was good for it. Mm-hmm. And that, whether I wanted to or not, I couldn't ignore anymore that I had put on more limitations than I needed to. Mm-hmm. And I had to acknowledge that I could do more, and I could challenge myself in areas that I had given excuses for in the past. Mm-hmm. And so now we find ourselves doing something like the Murph Challenge.
Yeah.
And the Murph Challenge has been great, but in all seriousness, pull-ups for this kind of condition is like a mental nightmare.
Yeah.
Because pull-ups are the epitome of, like, friction and pressure on the skin.
Oh, yeah.
But I've done them every day for 2 weeks now.
All right.
And I have not had to stop.
Nice. Are they getting easier?
No.
Ow.
No, the back muscles took a couple days to, like, get used to, like, hey, like, we need to help kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not just, like, the core and my shoulders.
Uh-huh.
And then it did get easier. I'm still on, like, 90 or 80 pounds of assistance. Mm-hmm. I started at 110, so I can't be too mad about that.
That's pretty good. That's really good.
And I did get things just get to work a bit differently. I get to do pull-ups. I don't necessarily need to just hop up and do 30 pull-ups with my bare hands. I did buy a wrap.
Yeah, yeah.
Or one of those straps for this type of thing. Mm-hmm. But it is getting easier, and the point that I'm at now is already a point that, before having this experience at Desert Solace, would have never even been in consideration for me. I would have laughed at you. So that's a big tangent from my own example, but that's just because I can comfortably speak about my own experience.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, no, the whole cancer thing was just to illustrate that sometimes you don't have a choice, right? Like, you don't have a choice to have normal skin or to have, like, water in between your skin or whatever.
Yeah, that's the part that I cannot control.
Yeah.
And believing otherwise is resistance.
Right. Yeah. So let me ask you this, Jordan, and we can end on this.
Are you about to challenge me to something else? I swear to God.
Calm down. I'm your friend. No, I want to know, we've talked a lot about resistance and acceptance. And what kind of friend would I be if I didn't push you a little bit? So what...
My heart is pumping.
Are you aware of any areas of your life right now, or any things in your life that you are still actively resisting?
That's a good question. In the same fashion that I chose to, for a long time in my life, avoid the topic of, like, being, like, physically active with these barriers, I would say on that same note, instead of accepting and choosing options and kind of stepping into it. I have avoided school. The majority of the anxiety attacks, or what are they called? Panic attacks? Anxiety attacks?
There's a difference.
Oh, okay. Well, these events that I have, 90% of the time they happened around school,
Mm-hmm.
and I am 3 classes away from an associate degree
Mm-hmm.
in college,
Yeah.
and I have mentally just left that in the past because of the emotions and the mental places that I was in past times that I tried to do school.
Mm-hmm.
And so I acknowledge that I have definitely gone in a direction of like avoiding it and not necessarily accepting it and processing that stuff. Does that make sense?
So yeah, so you're
With the condition thing, like instead of accepting it, I went and found things that could get around it and like found work that could do that, which I'm not saying that's an unhealthy thing,
right.
but I walked around the bush and figured my way around life. And in the same fashion, like instead of finishing school, like I created a job for myself that didn't require school and could still give me an income that was good.
Mm-hmm.
And all these things that could allow me to logically try to justify not going back to school. Even though in the back of my head, like there is a desire, but there is a fear
Right.
of having the same mental experiences that I had last time.
Right. So you're resisting going back and finishing your associate's degree.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. Is there anything wrong with not getting your associate's degree?
There's nothing wrong with getting the associate's degree, and I think I have processed that part of it,
Mm-hmm.
if only because I don't like school systems. But I have been able to go through that. So I think maybe there could be some more processing on like what I haven't accepted about my emotions about school.
Gotcha.
And it could be a locational thing because I do very much enjoy things like master classes or like lynda.com,
Mm-hmm.
or all those like online sources for these like online class type things.
Right.
I found that very helpful for anything from editing to storytelling to things like that. I enjoy it. I enjoy learning.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great.
So
Yeah, interesting.
that's the first thing that comes to mind for me. What about you? Does something come to mind, or did you have something? Did you have a seed? Did you have something you were trying to get me to say?
No, I was just wondering. I wanted to see. Well, I just wanted to get vulnerable a little bit.
Yeah, so that would be something that is definitely current in my life.
Gotcha.
Does anything come up for you?
Dang it! I was gonna just cut the episode off there, so I didn't have to.
Oh no, buddy! I do the edit on this show.
Yeah, actually, I kind of talked about it a little bit earlier in this episode. Grad school. It's kind of the same thing, actually. A little different. All summer long, I have been at odds with myself about how to proceed in my academic career. At one point, I thought I was just done with school and I was just gonna learn how to code, and I would be like a software developer.
Yes. Okay.
And that was definitely a fear-based thought. That was coming from a space of I was afraid to get rejected again. And there are actually free courses online that will teach you how to code and write all of the languages, the coding languages. There's free resources for that online. You can just go do that if you have the time. So, and then, that I decided that wasn't for me. Well, I realized that was a fear-based choice, and I didn't want to make a choice that was based on fear. So I went back to psychology. Well, what can I do? What can I do there? Do I reapply for the same exact programs, or do I take a year off? I'm summarizing several weeks of tormenting myself over what to do next, and I still haven't made a concrete choice because I'm still resistant to getting rejected again. I haven't set in stone the choices, the programs that I'm going to apply to, or anything along those lines. Or at this point I haven't even researched any new ones because I'm still in resistance to failing again. There's that fear of failure that's just ever present. And so that's probably the biggest thing that I'm resisting right now. And I've talked with some coworkers over at Desert Solace. I've talked with my wife about some options, and I think I have a really good outline of a plan, what I'm going to do. But I still haven't taken any concrete action towards anything because I'm just still in resistance to it.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, it was very obvious in the last episode that we talked about your grad stuff that it was definitely present emotionally, mentally, and physically for you.
Absolutely.
I want to quickly, we talk about our experiences, and sometimes I do that under the assumption that the other people are aware of the foundation, and some of our audience might be. So I just want to quickly go through the step-by-step thing of what I do that works for me when like the urge to act out for my addiction goes, and you can correct me, just so it's all out there.
Mm-hmm.
So step one is there's the desire to act out, and going down the path that is healthy for me. The first thing that happens is the awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just having this in the back of my head and trying to go about my day, I fully acknowledge that like I have the desire to act out or to do this or that.
Mm-hmm.
Step two is I get to accept that for everything that it is. I get to accept both that I'm feeling this. I get to step out of shame and challenge myself if I'm feeling any shame about that, because it's an emotion I'm feeling. I get to acknowledge that I get to accept the fact that it is a choice I have. I really whether or not I want to do it.
Can
I do
ask you
have
something?
the complete option. Yeah.
Oh, maybe you were just about to say it and I cut you off. Do you give yourself the option of acting out?
Yes. Yeah. The important thing is I verbally sometimes, but fully acknowledge that the option is there to act out.
Yeah.
And whether I want to or not, I can.
Yeah.
Then I get to first. I don't really know which goes first. You can probably tell me, Brian. But the two next things are both maybe challenging myself to go a little bit deeper. Why am I feeling this? What emotionally, spiritually, or mentally? What about myself is missing, or what am I short on right now? What needs have I not met? That's a good way to. That's the way that I want to say it.
Yeah.
What needs am I not meeting that is turning into this? And then I also get to look at all the options, and instead of resisting one thing, I've already acknowledged that I can act out if I want to. I get to look at another option. I get to choose to go down that path. Specifically with my recovery, it's a very spiritual based recovery for me, so I get to add in there that surrender to my higher power is a big thing. But in general, that's my process of acceptance. Do you have anything to add to that or to modify?
No, that was perfect. Actually, I would add, specifically in addiction recovery, reaching out to a friend in recovery is also a big deal.
Yeah. Maybe I can ask you this. I mean, you talked about your fear of being rejected. Do you feel like verbally saying that out loud to somebody else? I mean, do you feel like that has an effect on you?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, big time, even. Because in my head, the thought that I might get rejected is so big, right? There's nothing to compare. It's just in my head. It's a thought in my head, and there's no reference for the thought. But saying it out loud puts it in the physical world. And then it's like you've been thinking these words over and over again sometimes. But then when you say them, you can, like, you finally hear how stupid they sound. Or, you hear how they sound. There's
the reality of it, not the abyss.
Right. Because we talked about how your mind doesn't comprehend certain things. You talked about how your mind doesn't hear the word no or don't. It's not good at, like, your mind isn't good at qualifying things. How do you say, estimating,
proportioning things or scale, putting things to scale?
Yes, estimating scale. Yeah, that's what I want to say. Your mind's not good at estimating scale. You can measure things in your mind, but how do you measure a thought, right? You can't measure that. So your mind's not good at perceiving any kind of scale for this. And so in your head, it just seems so big and so scary. But then you say it out loud, and then something about the vibrating air particles that hit your ear and send a signal to your brain, something about that makes it so much smaller most of the time. And so there is a very real power in vocalizing your thoughts to somebody else, whether they're, fears about your future or, urges to act out or whatever you're thinking. Reaching out to somebody is hugely powerful.
I know, the power goes from having this massive urge to act out again in addiction recovery, goes away a little bit when saying it, and then it also, again, doing something that works instead of resisting something that doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
When I verbalize what I'm going through to somebody, they respond in the form of, I can relate in this way, and I can relate to what you're going through. The urge and the feeling of addiction gets replaced with connection.
Right.
And I don't know if we've mentioned it before, but you can say it better than I do. But what is the relationship between addiction and connection?
Mm-hmm.
It's always been a big thing.
The opposite of addiction is connection.
A lot of people, including myself, for a long time, thought that sobriety was the opposite of addiction.
Right.
That's not the case.
Right.
Sobriety is the lack of acting out in the addiction, and that's a
component of it. Sobriety is a component of recovery, but it isn't recovery in itself.
Yeah. Connection is the replacement, and the greater, the higher, what would you say, the higher frequency thing.
Yeah.
That replaces addiction in my life. So I just wanted to get that out there, and I appreciate giving those specific instances for addiction recovery. Those are two huge things that get to be added in there. Thanks for listening, everybody.
We've been wanting to do this episode for a while now, so we thought it would be a great week to do that. So look forward to another interview. I'm really looking forward to it for our next episode.
Bryan, I want to propose something to you on the air as far as our next serious topic.
Is this what it's like to be in the hot seat?
Yeah. You can feel your heart pumping.
Nope.
Because it was a random comment that you made to me on a portion of a previous episode that I actually edited out because I was self-conscious about it.
Okay.
How do you feel about next episode that we do this kind of thing, talking about ego?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Something for the audience to look forward to.
Yeah, I'm super into an ego episode.
I love it. Thanks, everybody. You can do all the usuals. We have all the social medias, and you can do all the ratings. And we'll talk to you in the next one.
Thank you.